Happy and Merry Christmas and Boxing Day to everyone. It is your host with the most, Griever, as always, bringing you guys some more Bleach to end off the year. Bleach episode 12, and the next video, of course, will be episode 15, of course. No. It'll be episode 13. We're going to do this in two videos because both episodes have a bit to talk about. And once again, I like to keep these videos a little shorter than some of my other videos, which you guys know can be quite long. We're talking, of course, about Bleach, Thousand Year Blood War Arc, episode 12. Now, one thing I want to say, I do have a problem with this episode. We'll save that for the end. I do have a problem. It's sort of a two-part problem, but it's the same scene, so we'll get to that. This episode finishes off, basically, Volume 60. It finishes off the majority, anyway, of Volume 60. Between this and the next episode, finish off Volume 60. But this finishes off, Can't Feel It Rain. That's what this encompasses, and it does a really good job. I love the effect, the animation style choice from Masaki with the hollow, when the hollow keeps affecting her and such. And we now know in this episode. See, a lot of people at the time, when this was going on in the manga, had a bit of an issue with the whole, well, this seems kind of convenient. With the hollow attack, and of course it bit her, and of course Ishin feels responsible, and blah, blah, blah. No, it was because White bit her. It had nothing to do with a hollow biting her. That was a hollow made up of Soul Reaper souls. That's why it was poisonous. That's why it did the whole hollow hole in her neck, and Ishin had to do what Kisuke said. And here it's explained once again in black and white. I don't know why this was ever a debate. I don't know why this was ever an issue. Basically, the idea is, of course, what's the opposite of Quincy's? Soul Reapers. What's the opposite of Hollows? Humans. So Ishin needed to become both because Masaki now became a mixed blood of Hollow and Quincy. So she needed to be saved by the how do you counter a virus? An antivirus. Well, what's the antithesis? What's the anti of each of those things? Shinigami, or Soul Reaper, and human. So Ishin had to go into the Gigai to become a human, but also be a Soul Reaper, of course, in a Gigai, so that he could counteract both the Hollow and the Quincy to keep an equilibrium, to keep a balance, to save her life. Makes total sense, and then they popped out 3 kids. Well, Human, Hollow, Soul Reaper, Quincy. I mean, somebody was going to get the jackpot there. You know what I mean? Like, would you be surprised if you took, if you took Marina Baccarin and Henry Cavill and they made some babies? Would you be surprised that they'd be tall, gorgeous, and talented? I mean, I'm not saying that everything lies in the genes and the bloodline, but good genes do matter. That's just a fact. And Ichigo had some goddamn good genes. So people calling it an ass pull, people calling it like convenient, people calling it like MC plot armor and stuff. Sure, there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that in every single shonen battle manga, both big and large. But at the end of the day, at least this explanation does make sense as to how it went down and why it happened and how it's working now. Right? Because White was composed of Soul Reaper souls. So Aizen basically created or recreated the method, used the same method to create this hollow, used the same method that is made to create Zanpakuto. I mean, I'm not surprised that this thing needed some special, Hugo Watsits to be able to make it that Masaki lived. It is a very good episode. It's well paced. We also get the relationship, of course, expanded upon with Ryuken and Katagiri and Masaki and the whole bit. So we know why Ryuken's a little bitter towards Soul Reapers. We understand his position. We understand his mother's position because even though we did the watch party with Misk later and I said something kind of stupid because I wasn't fully caught up on the manga at the time. I hadn't reread the manga in a while. We see that she took an injury. So by all accounts, and I didn't get into this in the watch party, I believe that because she's married to Soken, and remember, Soken's the one guy with the biggest Quincy balls of them all to say, fuck you, Quincy Jesus, I'm not playing your game. The one Quincy that we know of for a fact that said, nope, not doing it. he's married to, of course, Ryuken's mother there. And she has an injury on her leg. And she's extremely careful about the bloodline, careful about exposing herself, careful about hollows, careful about soul reapers. And considering that Soken was such a passive, we need to try to talk and get along with the soul reapers and yada yada yada, I believe that she one time got burned by trying to help a soul reaper. Remember, soul reaper did that injury to her leg. That's why she's bitter about it. Maybe the soul reaper refused to help her when she found out she tried to help them, found out she was a Quincy, and left her to fend for herself against the Hollow. They ran away. We don't know the situation that may or may not have happened, but I would be incredibly surprised, and I don't think that I think a strong argument could be made for my argument. I feel like there's very little reason to believe that soul reapers weren't involved somehow in her injury. We don't know necessarily how. We don't know how it happened. And now she can't really go out into the field anymore, I believe. Probably all she can do is walk around and stand. That's about the best, because we see it's a very heavy wound on her leg. So that's quite interesting and stuff. So, and that's just a small off panel in the manga, but here it's really showcased better. Anime sometimes takes those little known panels that we don't really think about or expands them to the point that it's like, okay, all right, I see where we're going with this time. You know, like just brings things to the forefront, brings them a little more into the look at this. This isn't something you just skip over or forget. So I really like that aspect of it. Now, of course, Masaki does survive. Ishin has to go into the special Gigai. He clearly was a bit of a Keto master as well, or at least very high adept at healing Keto at the very least, which is interesting because Ichigo can't do Keto. We're shit. So once again, he didn't get all the great genes. Like let's be real here. So he ends up opening up a clinic knowing his Keto spells, which is sort of funny when you think about it. So I would argue maybe he was in the Squad 4 barracks for a time, because he seemed to know, he said healing techniques. Well, since he can't use his spiritual pressure, he can't use any of those abilities, and even though he said he got a lot of help from Urahara, he opens up a clinic where he can't use his Keto to heal people. So he's got to rely on human medical knowledge. So I would argue that maybe Ishin started out in the Squad 4 barracks and learned alongside of healing Keto, of course, but actual surgical techniques, yada, 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 because as we see, he's not, a billionaire doctor, but he's an accomplished clinic doctor. So I would argue that he's got, some background in that, even though it's never confirmed. I would argue that Ishin probably started out in the Squad 4 barracks before being promoted to either, I don't know if he went straight from Squad 4 to Squad 10 captain, but it's plainly obvious to me that he must have had some time in the Squad 4 barracks, or befriended them and hung out a lot with them or something, right? But I think it's much more likely he started after the academy. He probably went to the Squad 4 barracks for a number of years before he rose through the ranks and then joined Squad 10. So we do have that information. And of course, he ends up marrying Masaki. They have the kids, yada, yada, yada. Now, there is an end credit scene part of the episode, okay? There's an end credit scene part of the episode. Now, during this, this is where I draw a bit of a problem. This is where I have, it's a nitpick at best. Let's call it a nitpick. Let's call a spade, okay? But what ends up happening is they have an entire scene, and I mean like 3 minutes, that could have just been in the goddamn episode. We all know about the Marvel credit, the post-credit scene, right? That's a thing now. But Bleach, why? I never understood this whole after the opening or right before the opening theme. They're showing scenes from the show as well, and then from the episode, and then you can't skip the ending because there's always a scene. But I understand 30 seconds. But 3 minutes, a literal whole 3 to 4 minute scene. goes on the entirety of Ishin talking about his mother, talking about Masaki, talking all about she could have killed Grand Fisher. Her on July 17th of that year, or June 7th, I forget that, July 17th at 9 o'clock, whatever, they all lost their powers. Uryu's mother fell deathly ill, who was always weak anyways. She lost her powers, so the Ashwaulan happened. Anybody who was impure. Now, at the time, Misaki, of course, was a very powerful Quincy, but she still had now mixed blood due to the Hollow inside her, and the Ashwaulan affected all mixed blood Quincy's, basically killed them all. So, which, funnily enough, did not kill Uryu, or Ichigo, or Karen, or Yuzu. So, it didn't fully affect, so the Ashwaulan wasn't, so we'll talk about that in future episodes, but the Ashwaulan isn't perfect, seemingly, because it affected some, but not all. And it took away her powers, of course, on that very night that she was attacked by Grand Fisher. So, and that's why I killed her. Now, here is my problem with this episode, is the fact that don't put an entire 4 minutes of the episode, 3 to 4 minutes of the episode, after the ending scene. After the ending credits. That's just dumb. You want to put a quick 30 to 40 second, reveal or something from the manga or something really quick. Whatever. No problem. Not an entire scene. That was an entire scene at the end of the episode. Don't do that. Don't do that. The ending credits are literally called ending credits because they're at the end, not 3/4 of the way through an episode, the end of the episode. The episode's still 24 minutes and 36 seconds long. But somehow the ending credits are at the 19-minute mark. Why? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I'm just saying, that's a nitpick, but it is annoying. Number 2 is within that end credit scene, within that, which you can't call it anything else, within that scene that shouldn't be an end credit scene, but that is, there's something missing from the manga, and I don't know how they're going to do this, so I'm going to withhold judgment, but so far I don't like it, is that Ishin acknowledges that he didn't go help Masaki. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, in the manga, in volume 60, he mentions, it wasn't that I couldn't go help your mother that day. I chose not to. She was an accomplished Quincy. Grand Fisher, yeah, powerful to standard Soul Reapers, but not to her, and not to anybody of any note. So, would have been totally fine. And, so there was no danger. He did not assume any type of danger. But then, he didn't know about the Ashwaulan. And then, even though he started to sense, it's funny because in this episode and in the manga, it's mentioned you're not even going to be able to see hollows anymore. The level you're going to be at right now, you're going to basically, for all intents and purposes, you're going to be human, 99.9% human Ishin, and you'll probably never be a Soul Reaper ever again. Yet, it seems like the Gigai slowly lost. Well, once, of course, over time, things get weak, right? So the chains weaken, the things lessen, and probably due to having multiple children, which passed on, as we know for a fact, passed on the powers of white to Ichigo, so the hollow now is probably a lot weaker. The hollow, of course, the white that bit Masaki was probably a lot weaker, and this is why Ishin, they could have easily explained this part. This is a little bit of headcanon, but by having the children and passing on some of the hollows, some of the Quincy, some of the Soul Reapers, some of everything, it slowly but surely made the necessity, the balance, was sort of going like this a little bit, right? So, Ishin was finally able to sense Grand Fisher and stuff like that, able to sense hollows at the very least, able to sense spiritual pressures, and he acknowledges in the manga, I could have gone and helped her. This implies that he at the very least might have had maybe some tools from Urahara's shop, or at the very least at this junction, maybe he could have forced himself out of the Gigai. Maybe he felt his powers coming back or something like that. Maybe that's why they eliminated it, once again, because it opens a lot of doors. Like, well, wait a minute now. it's only because Masaki was dead and didn't need the protection anymore. But then you could argue he didn't turn back into a Soul Reaper until the Arrancar arc. Another, 10 years later? So maybe they're trying to close a plot hole by doing that. I would argue different. I would argue there was no need for Ishin to try to become a Soul Reaper at any time in the last, since Masaki died, till he did become a Soul Reaper again. But the fact he was in that special Gigai the entire time, he felt it weakened, and he felt like if he really thought his wife was in danger, he might have been able to force himself out and become a Soul Reaper once again. The implication is at the very least there, and they took it out completely. Now, I'm not the hugest fan of taking that out because it also takes away Ishin's guilt. Because remember, what the big scene at the beginning of the series was, of course, in front of Masaki's grave and all that stuff, and how Ishin tells Ichigo, like, this is not your fault. We don't blame you, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm smoking a cigarette because Masaki thought I look cool, which I wish they had added. They don't show that in the manga in the volume 60, nor do they show it in the anime here. I feel like that would have been a nice little added scene here. Out of everything you're going to add, you should have added at least one scene where he picks up a cigarette and smokes. She goes, wow, don't you look pretty badass, or something like that. It would have been a nice little touch because, of course, he only smokes in front of Masaki's grave because it was the one time she said, I look cool, right? So I feel like that was also a missed opportunity there to showcase that. And once again, the whole guilt, Ishin never blamed the kids, and Ishin, or the sisters and Ishin never blamed. Well, part of the reason that Ishin doesn't blame Ichigo is because, well, one, he probably blames Yuha with the ash walling because he knew the truth. When he found that out, we don't know. But number two is, of course, he's not going to blame Ichigo. He blames himself because he assumed. It's sort of like, I know it doesn't make sense. It's unfair to blame. He blames himself. He shouldn't, because that's a situation beyond his control. There was no possible way Ishin could have known that Masaki's powers would give out that night at that time in the fight against Grand Fisher. How was he ever supposed to know? He wasn't. There was no way for him to actually gain that. There was no realistic way that he would have had that information and had that doubt. But it doesn't lessen the guilt he feels. Because he feels like, I didn't go there because she can handle it. It's sort of like if your wife gets into the car, you're like, yeah, go drive with your brother, it's fine. Or yeah, it's a little rainy, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. You're a good driver. Everything will be okay. And then all of a sudden, the car has a malfunction you didn't know about, and you know what I mean? Like, how are you supposed to know? The car was running fine. The last checkup you did all the maintenance, you did all the checkups you were supposed to, you maintenanced the car like you were supposed to every so many kilometers or miles or whatever, and then she gets in the car and there's a malfunction with the car. How are you supposed to know that? You're not. But do you still blame yourself? I should have stopped her from getting in the car. I should have taken better care of the car. I should have insisted on that special premium deal at the dealership for extra maintenance. Whatever. You're always going to find some negative way to put the blame on yourself as the person who, So, the fact of the matter is, I say all this because this was a huge Ishin moment that's sort of taken away from us. Even if it leaves a couple of minor at best, little plot holes throughout the entirety of Bleach, I would have preferred that scene be in there. I would have preferred when he was talking to Ichigo, he says, what he says in the manga, it's not that I didn't go save Masaki that day, it's that I chose not to. And then explains. But we don't get that scene. And I feel like we're either setting it up for more later down the line, and I hope we are, but for right now, that's an issue I sort of have with this. So, anyways, I still really love the episode. The episode was great. It was fine. Everything was good. But those are two very minor, once again, having the ending credits at the 19-minute mark for a 25-minute episode. And once again, during that scene, they miss out on a key part of Ishin's character and Ishin's guilt towards Masaki's death, which I feel is very important and missing it out here in the anime. I hope it's because they're building up for something later. That's my hope, because so far there hasn't been very many things to complain about with this great adaptation of 1,000 Year Blood War arc. So anyways, that's episode 12. Hope you guys had a great Christmas and a great Boxing Day and all that fun jazz leading up to the new year of 2023. 33333. So hope you guys are having a great time. Like, comment, and subscribe as always. Last week before the big 2023. I mean, if we're going to send off Bleach until July, then hell yeah, these last 2 episodes are the way to send it off, aren't they? So hope you guys are having a great one. Like, comment, subscribe, drink responsibly as always, and we'll see you back here very, very soon because just watched episode 13 as well, so we're going to be talking about that here in a minute. So stay tuned for that video to drop as well, and we'll see you back here next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.